Everybody ready for rain? I don't know. There's advantages, disadvantages, right? We're ready or not, we can't control the weather. We're going to Proverbs 21. Like Kent Thompson said, he said, if I could control the rain, he said, all my neighbors would be upset with me. Anyway, that's about the truth, isn't it? Is that something he would say? Anyway, let's see. I think we're going to start 21. Is that right? Okay, that's what we got. We'll try. We got a lot of redundancy. We're going to try to pick up the pace a little bit, discuss things if we need to, if we have questions, but try to get through this. Proverbs is a long book. A lot of things over and over again that have been rehearsed, right? And so, go back. 21 says, the king's heart, 21:1, the king's heart is in the hand of the Lord like rivers of water. He turns it wherever he wishes. And so, who ordains our leaders? Okay, does God force them against their will? Think about Pharaoh. No, he doesn't. But he uses them, right, to complete his righteousness. Okay? So that's what we're talking about here. And so when you think about Solomon writing about his son, what's he telling his son? Make sure that God can use you for what? Righteousness. Think about that. God's going to use you as an instrument. Okay? So maybe 22, section 22, the nation here. Put it under there. Verse 2, every way of a man is right in his own eyes, but the Lord weighs what? The hearts. We go back to the Judges. We understand when Joshua and the other elders died, Israel did what? That which was right in whose eyes? Their own eyes. Okay? And so every way is right in his own, but God looks at what? Okay, their heart. Okay? And so does that mean that just because our heart had good intentions, it will rescue us? No. Okay. But our hearts need to be looking to who? To God, to God's wisdom. So we understand that. And so we think about this. And so maybe we should put this under section 1, wisdom. Okay. Verse 3, to do righteousness and justice is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice. I know we referenced this several times. We go back and we look at Saul in 1 Samuel. And when Saul went and was supposed to destroy the king Agag and his nation, what did he do? He plundered them. Okay. And so we see the same thing here. We've talked about this earlier. So to do righteousness and justice is more acceptable than what? Sacrifice. Okay. And so will sacrifice come if we're doing righteousness and justice? Yeah, if we do that. But we can't buy our way into righteousness with these things. And so when we think about this, we need to think about section 26, righteousness. Right doing is right doing. Verse 4, a haughty look, a proud heart, and the plowing of the wicked are sin. We looked at this, I believe, it's been several months ago, the idea of things that are an abomination to the Lord. And so a haughty look, what's a haughty look? The look as if I'm better than you, okay? The proud heart and the plowing of the wicked are all what? Sin. Okay. And so we can't take part in these things. And so maybe section 29, judgment, right? We got to judge these things. There's a judgment made. Verse 5, the plans of the diligent lead surely to plenty, but everyone who is hasty surely to poverty. Lauren, you got our ESV with you tonight. Okay. And so the plans of the diligent lead to what? Abundance. Okay. The Lord, in establishing the church, was it successful? There's a lot of wisdom and planning that went behind that. We need to have the same thing. But those of everyone who is hasty surely to what? Poverty. Okay. Do we plan on doing well? We should. So he's telling his son, we need to plan for the future. What do we use? Wisdom and righteousness for these things. Maybe section 12. It applies in other areas also. Section 13, industry and laziness. Verse 6, it says, getting treasures by a lying tongue is the fleeting fantasy of those who seek death. You think about the fleeting fantasy. I'm going to lay around and dream of ways to what? For someone to give me, right? Give me. And so getting treasured by a lying tongue is, you think about, we go back to verse 5, what we looked at, the planning of the diligence leads to what? Abundance. Not the laying around and scheming for ways to get rich. So maybe this would be section 17 when we think about generosity and greed, right? Does a person want to take away from somebody to gain? I think so. All right, any questions or comments? If we're going too fast, that's all right, but there's been a lot of redundancy I've noticed, and I visited with some folks, and they feel the same way, so we're just going to try to push through. Verse 8, the way of a guilty man is perverse, but as for the pure, his work is right. And so a guilty man, the way of a guilty man is perverse. How do we know? Observation, right? We're going to see what type of individual. We'll know them by their what? Works. Okay. James talks about that. James chapter 2, the second half of the book, right? We can look at these things. And so we understand that there's a problem with the heart, right? Maybe. And so you think about the hard work. Anyway, section 27, a joy and fulfilled life. Verse 9, better to dwell in a corner of a housetop than in a house shared with a contentious woman. Always makes me laugh. Anyway, it's better to, this isn't the only verse we've looked at that talks about a similar situation, dwelling in the wilderness or in the field. Better to dwell in a corner of a housetop. Is that a good place to live? No. But that's better than what? A house shared with, what's contention? Okay. Yeah, someone just wants to stir the pot, right? Okay, it's better. And so, I wonder, was Solomon's son married at this point? If he wasn't, he's saying, watch out, right? If he was, he said, I'm sorry, son. No, we don't know. But anyway, wisdom. And so we think about this, husbands and wives, verse 19. Does it apply the other way? Yeah, you can reverse it, still applies. Okay, we understand that. Verse 10 says, the soul of the wicked desires evil. His neighbor finds no favor in his eyes. What benefit is there of an evil neighbor? No. One of the things that I've really thought about a lot for several months as we've gone through this and some other things, and I know Eric's talked some about this in some of his lessons and things, is how much righteousness is a benefit to a community or a nation, right? The reverse is also true, right? How much wickedness and evil is a detriment, right? We looked at Proverbs 14:34 several months ago. Righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is reproach to any people. Where's that start? Does it start big or small? Small. Okay. So it grows out from there. So maybe this could go under the nation when we think about section 22. Verse 11, when the scoffer is punished, the simple is made wise, but when the wise is instructed, he receives knowledge. Maybe section 29 under judgment, but a scoffer is punished, the simple is made. What are we talking about? Discipline. We're talking about guiding someone in the right direction. I don't know if we've talked about this. Maybe we have. Think about this. I think we have with the illustration of children, whether they got disciplined or they got punished, right? That idea. Okay. What are punishments designed to do? Yeah. Okay. I think about that. You know, we have a county jail, there's regional jails in the state, then there's DOC facilities, there's federal facilities. They got all these things. And so the question I have, you know, this is a question I don't think we can answer here, but brings up the question is are these things designed to protect society from these people, or is it designed to steer them away from what they're doing? You think about that. When you study the Old Testament law, we see God's law. I think we had, unless I'm wrong, there's 3 punishments for crime, right? One was you had to pay restitution. If the crime fit a certain criteria, you had to pay restitution. That's one. If you couldn't pay restitution, what did you do? Remember? You're sold into slavery to pay your restitution. Okay? You said, well, you can't afford to pay it, right? What do you got to do? Yeah, you worked it out. Okay. The third one, if it fit another criteria of crime, what was the penalty? Yeah, death. Okay. And you look at that. For me, that's very deterring, isn't it? And you think about those situations. At what point does that criminal become a burden to society? It's hard to, isn't it? Anyway, I think about that. And so verse 11, when the scoffer is punished, the simple is made wise, but when the wise is instructed, he receives knowledge. It depends what they do with the information, right? Whether they're going to be wise with the discipline or foolish with the discipline. You know, some people, Pharaoh was being disciplined by God, right? What did he do? He hardened his heart. Was he a wise man or a foolish man? That's a grand scale, but you see children, young adults, you see people starting to develop, and you say this person, his discipline's a good thing for them, or their discipline's going to harden their hearts. What's that?
Somebody needs to look at his clothes before they run him his teeth.
Sorry. I hope we don't have high definition. It's been a busy week because I look at the rain, 10 days. We are hours away from having everything sewn up for the week. We got tomorrow, so hopefully we're all right. 12, it says, the righteous God wisely considers the house of the wicked, overthrowing the wicked for their what? Wickedness. Think about Sodom and Gomorrah. What happened to Sodom and Gomorrah?
They were destroyed.
Yeah, destroyed. For what?
For
Wickedness. What preserved the nation? We go back and we think about the conversation that the heavenly visitors had with Abraham, right? When Abraham petitioned for salvation of the city, what was the conversation? That's right. If there's enough righteous, the city will be saved. Righteousness exalts a nation. It preserves a nation. And so we see this. And so a righteous God wisely considers the house of the wicked. He observes it. He knows it. Overthrowing the wicked for what? This is an important principle when we think about the character, the nature of God. And we go up here and look at section 8, the nature of God. Why does God destroy people? Okay. It's not because of their skin color, who their parents were, what their favorite color was. What is it? All has to do with righteousness or unrighteousness. That's it. That's it. Okay? So we see that. All right, verse 13. Whoever shuts his ear to the cry of the poor will also cry himself and will not be what? Heard. Right? Again, another verse that talks about pity towards who? You think about, was Jesus kind-hearted towards the poor? Mm-hmm. Yeah. We need to have compassion. That's the word I was looking for. Compassion on these people. Look at we're going to verse 14. It says, a gift in secret pacifies anger, and a bribe behind the back strong wrath. What's the difference between a gift and a bribe? Bribe has something attached, right? And so when we think about these things, a gift in secret pacifies anger, but a bribe behind the back, strong wrath. You say, well, wait a second, isn't that the same thing? When we think about our generosity, kind-heartedness, what will that do? Buy us a lot of favoritism, won't it? But what will bribes buy you? Yeah. It gets you fired.
Many times I've been trying to be bribed.
When we look at the situation, right? There's a story I remember, and this actually more applies to the nature of God. And we looked at that a couple verses back. But there was a man who had wrecked his car, and he was doing something illegal and caused him to wreck his car. And there he was laying in the ditch. A man pulled up and found him there and was able to administer the aid that he needed to save his life and call for the appropriate help and those sorts of things. And he saved that guy's life. And then several months later, as all the legal process took place, that man that caused the wreck, he had to answer for the consequences, or had consequences, had to answer for his actions, right? He goes in the courtroom, and he realizes that the judge in front of him was the same guy that rescued him out of the ditch and saved his life. And the judge there rules that he was guilty and that he had to face the punishment for his crime. And the young man, he pleads with the judge and says, why in the world would you condemn me when you're the one that saved me? And you remember, has anybody ever heard an illustration similar to that? What the judge said? He says, that day I was your, what? Savior. And today I'm your judge. Right? You got an answer for that. So go back to the nature of God, but we see the situation, right, was different. He was in a different position then. All right, verse 15, it says, it is a joy for the just to do justice, but destruction will come to the works of iniquity. We see the words joy and works. Okay? Do we enjoy doing what's right? You think about children, again, children, your parents say, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do that. What is what? It's work. It's work. And then as we get older and we develop, then we start to realize that some of those habits or routines that our parents required us to do, they're no longer work, but what are they? They're the right thing to do, right? How many of you hate brushing your teeth? I hate to say that brushing your teeth is a work of righteousness, but it's an illustration, right? I hated it as a kid. And I'm not saying I enjoy brushing my teeth today, but I believe it's an important part of my life, probably an important part of your life too, for others to brush their teeth. Right? You think about that.
Very important part of her life.
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, I don't care.
But the thing, and we understand Christianity takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of effort. Okay? But you go to Philippians chapter 2, and what do we see there that Paul wrote about Christ? It says, for the joy that was set before him endured the cross. We asked the question, was Jesus going to the cross, was it a work of righteousness? Yeah, it was. But it tells us, who for the joy that was set before him, he went to the cross. Okay. Do we find joy in our Christian service? I'd say at times we don't, but we should, right? We should develop that joy and appreciation for doing what's right. So, 27, a joy and fulfilled life. Verse 16, a man who wanders from the way of understanding will rest in the assembly of the dead. What's the benefit for unrighteousness or unwise living? There's no benefit. There's no reward, right? And so there's no deliverance, And so we think about that. Maybe section 2, the folly of fools, we should apply this here. 17, he who loves pleasure will be a poor man. He who loves wine and oil will be rich. And again, we're talking about focus in life, aren't we? Fred Rhodes, he preached a sermon years, probably 8, 10 years ago, Saturday all-day meeting. And he talked about the difference between joy and fun, right? Joy and fun. What do we do for fun? Is it the same thing you do for joy? Right? Are you guys getting married because you think it'd be fun or because you want a joyful life? Fun. Anyway, we see the difference, right? Same principle here, right? He who loves pleasure will be a poor man, but he who loves wine, oil will be rich. It's about direction, focus in life. That's what we're talking about. Did I miss that one? I got this one wrong. Oh, he who loves yeah. Sorry. He who loves pleasure will be a poor man. So it's the same thing, second. I'm glad you caught that.
I would disagree totally.
Okay. All right. Verse 18, we'll try to get this one right. The wicked shall be a ransom for the righteous, and the unfaithful for the upright. What's a ransom? Yeah, okay. You're held for, right? Okay. So the wicked shall be a ransom for the righteous, and the unfaithful for the upright. If I understand this verse right, when you go back and you look at Romans, or go forward and look at Romans 8:28, we know that all things work together for good for who? Those who love God are called according to his. Drawing a blank, it's been a long week. Anyway, we look at this. When Solomon wrote Ecclesiastes, what do we understand what's the whole purpose of life? What's that? That's not the purpose of life. To fear God and keep his commands, right? That's what he's warning him against, is the vanity. 8 billion people in the world today, right? How many are righteous? Small percentage, right? Do we benefit? You know, when Jesus was calling for disciples, and one of the phrases that sticks out in my mind was Jesus said, let the dead do what? Let the dead bury the dead. You think about that. We've got a world full of people who are working their lives away for what?
For the next 20 to 30, whatever the rest of their life.
Yeah, for what the rest of their life is. So you go back, our gospel meeting with Dan, he talked about the four empires, the Babylonian, the Medo-Persian, the Grecian, and the Roman Empire. And then we look at each of those 4 empires brought an important aspect to the establishment of the church, didn't it? Babylon gave a synagogue worship. That's where Paul went when he was spreading the gospel. The Medo-Persian introduced the idea of what? A law that doesn't change, doesn't alter. The Greek Empire gave us what? A common language, okay? Konagri, a worldwide language. And the Roman Empire, we know all roads do what? Yeah. There was no better time in history for the gospel to spread than those times. You think all the people who are out there building those roads were Christians? We understand they were built before the coming, right? But do you think they became Christians? Would God use all those, whoever they were, thousands of laborers that built all those roads? Did they benefit from the gospel? We understand that was their choice not to. But they spent their lives like people today who get up, go to work, do their job, go home, get up, go to work, do their job, build all those Roman roads so that the gospel could spread. They wasted their life away. But was there a benefit from that? Others benefited. Okay. And so we don't need to be like those road builders. We need benefit from the roads, right? So we think about that. The wicked shall be a ransom for the righteous, and the unfaithful for the upright. Verse 19, better to dwell in the wilderness than with a contentious and angry woman. 2 times in the same chapter, what Solomon warned us against. Be careful, son. Okay, so again, we might put this under husbands and wives or home life. Verse 20, there is a desirable treasure and oil in the dwelling of the wise, but a foolish man squanders it. What are we talking about? Preparation. Isn't that what we're talking about? There's a desirable treasure and an oil in the dwelling of the wise. We go to the New Testament, we have a parable about, what do we have? Wise virgins and unwise. What was the difference? Is there an invitation song about lamps trimmed bright, right? What's the words to that song? Going through your head, you'll think about it on the way home and you'll remember. But anyway, well, we're talking about preparation, aren't we? Being prepared. And so maybe section 28, salvation in God, deliverance, when we're prepared. Verse 21, he who follows righteousness and mercy finds life, righteousness, and honor. These are the blessings associated with what? Righteousness. Section 26, a righteous life. 22, a wise man scales the city of the mighty and brings down the trusted stronghold. I thought about, when we think about this verse, go back, and that guy that saw the guy's helmet fall off the wall, he came down. Was that wisdom at work? You say, well, he's a lucky guy. He's the right man at the right place. We saw he seized the opportunity based on the information he gathered. That's the way we need to be. And so we think about that. Section 1, maybe wisdom. Verse 23, whoever guards his mouth and tongue keeps his soul from troubles. What causes most of our trouble? Our mouth. Section 11, a proud and haughty man, a scoffer is his name. He acts with what type of pride? Arrogant pride. This would be in opposition, so to a righteous individual. Section 3 is prideful heart. Verse 24 says, verse 25, the desire of the lazy man kills him, for his hands refuse to do what? Labor. What is it Nike or Mountain Dew that says just do it? Which one is it? Nike. Is it Nike? Okay. Just do it. Okay. Your parents ever tell you that when you were younger? Yes. Just do it. Okay. Sometimes we have to say to ourselves what? Just do it. The thing about Paul, when Paul was talking to, wasn't it Agrippa? And Agrippa said, almost thou what? He said, almost. Paul should have said what? Just do it. You think about that. He was so close. Okay. And so when we know to do good, what should we do? Do it. Okay. All right. Verse 26. He covets greedily all day long, but the righteous gives and does not spare. And so these verses are really connected to the last one. You got the lazy man who doesn't want, he covets everything he has, but the righteous does what? Gives. When we go and we study the Old Testament, we understand about the sacrifices, the gifts, the tithes that were supposed to go to the temple, right? You think about the tithe, just the principle of the tithe. How much of the tithe? The tithe means 10%, right? So how much did God get? It's an easy answer. He got 10% of, and Debbie's right, all the tithe. But all 10%, right? 10% of what? This isn't hard. You think about it. See, we're working backwards. We think about blessings. Did God want his religion, his temple, his people, his priests Did he want them to be wealthy? Did he want them to prosper? Yeah. Yeah. People say, I got to give 10% of this? God said, well, if you're not going to give 10% of a little, I'm not going to give you 100% of a lot. Right? You think about that. All right, we're out of time. We'll pick up here. Any questions?